I didn't waste a moment leaving after my dad told me to get out, right after I'd finished fixing up their house. "Your sister's moving in," he said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I didn't argue. I just packed up and left. It took them 48 hours to realize the mistake they'd made. In hindsight, I should have seen it coming. The red flags were glaring. My parents were always the type to take more than they offered, treating generosity like a favor they were doing you. I overlooked it, clinging to the idea that family sticks together. When I hit a rough spot financially, I stayed calm at first. My contract job had ended unexpectedly, and though I had some savings, they wouldn't last long. Bills, rent, and daily expenses were mounting, and I needed a plan to stay afloat. Moving back in with my parents seemed like a practical solution, at least for a while. They had the room, and when I suggested it, they agreed instantly. But there was a condition. The house needed work. My dad pitched it as a fair deal. If I handled the repairs, I could live there without paying rent. I knew a bit about home improvement, and the bedroom I'd be staying in was in rough shape. The walls were cracked, the carpet was worn and filthy, the door was broken, and the hallway leading to it was falling apart. My dad made it sound like I was getting the better end of the deal. "You get a place to stay, and we get a better house," he said. "It's a win for everyone." So I agreed. For nearly 2 months, I poured everything into the project. I started early each morning and worked late into the night, covered in grime and paint, my muscles sore from the labor. I ripped out the old carpet and laid new flooring. I patched the walls, repainted, replaced the door, and added built-in shelves for extra storage. The hallway was an even bigger job, replacing light fixtures, fixing squeaky floorboards, repainting, and repairing sections of the ceiling where plaster was flaking off. At first, I used whatever materials were on hand, but it soon became clear I'd need to buy most of the supplies myself. My parents never offered to chip in, and I didn't press them. I told myself it was fine because I was creating a space for myself. In total, I spent $3,700 on materials, flooring, paint, wood, tools, everything. I didn't track every penny because I thought it was worth it. I believed I was building something for my future. I should have known better. The day I finished, my dad called me over. My mom stood beside him, her face blank, as it always was when she was about to go along with whatever he said. I expected some gratitude, maybe a nod to the work I'd put in. Instead, my dad dropped the bombshell. "We've decided your sister's going to live here." I waited for him to laugh, to say it was a mistake, but he was serious. My mom nodded, acting like it was the most reasonable choice. I let out a short laugh, but they didn't join in. "What do you mean?" I asked. "We had an agreement." "She needs the room more," my dad said. My sister, who already had a decent apartment with her boyfriend, who hadn't lifted a finger to help with the house. I asked when they decided this. My dad shrugged. "We've been thinking about it for a bit. It's not personal." "Not personal, right?" I looked at the room, the one I'd spent nearly 2 months and almost $4,000 fixing up. I thought about arguing, about pointing out how unfair this was, about demanding they at least cover the costs I'd sunk into their house. But I knew them too well. They'd made their decision, and nothing I said would change it. So I stayed silent. I turned around, grabbed my things, and started packing. I'd been crashing in the living room during the renovations, expecting to move into the bedroom once it was done. Now I was being shown the door. They probably expected me to protest, to beg them to reconsider. I wasn't going to give them that. I left without a word. What they didn't know was that 48 hours later, they'd regret it all. When I walked out, I had no plan, no backup. Just my truck, a couple of bags, and the heavy realization that I'd spent weeks working for people who didn't hesitate to discard me the moment it suited them. I didn't fight or scream. I just drove away. I spent hours on the road, going nowhere, replaying it all in my mind. The effort, the exhaustion, the $3,700 I'd spent. My parents hadn't even acknowledged it. They'd watched me pour my time and money into their house and acted like it was nothing. That night, I pulled into a 24-hour gas station and slept in my truck. It was cramped and uncomfortable, but it was mine, more than I could say for the house I'd left behind. The next morning, I knew I had to figure things out. My savings were dwindling, and I didn't want to burn through them on a hotel. I started calling friends to see if anyone had a spare couch. Most were too far away or had their own problems. Then I remembered Jake, an old coworker I'd been tight with. I called him, gave him the short version of what happened, and he didn't hesitate. "Man, come stay with me, as long as you need," he said. So I drove to Jake's place about an hour away. When I got there, he handed me a cold drink and didn't pry. It was exactly what I needed. Then, 48 hours after I left, things took a turn. My phone started lighting up. Missed calls from my dad, messages from my mom, even texts from my sister, who rarely reached out. I ignored them at first, but the flood of notifications made me curious. Then my cousin, Lisa, texted me. "Dude, what's going on? Your parents are freaking out." I was confused and replied, "What are you talking about?" She shot back, "They won't say much, but they're losing it. Your mom mentioned something about lawyers." Lawyers. That stopped me cold. What could they possibly need lawyers for? Then I saw a text from my dad. You need to fix this, now. I stared at my phone, baffled. I hadn't done anything. I'd left quietly, hadn't touched their house, hadn't caused any damage. So why were they panicking? I leaned back in Jake's chair, thinking it over. Then it hit me. It wasn't about what I'd done. It was about what they thought I'd taken, or what was missing. The moment they realized it, they knew they'd messed up. I ignored their messages for hours, letting them stew in their own chaos. But the texts kept coming, and soon my sister was calling too. That was odd. She never reached out unless she needed something. I let it go to voicemail but couldn't resist checking what was going on. Instead of calling her back, I texted Lisa. Okay, what's the deal? Her reply came fast. Your sister showed up to move in and flipped out. Your dad's furious. Your mom's a wreck. I smirked. Good. I knew my sister well enough to imagine the scene. She probably rolled up with her boyfriend, expecting a perfect new bedroom, only to find a nightmare. And the best part? I hadn't done a thing. I'd left the house exactly as it was. The floors were done, the shelves were up, the lights worked. Everything was finished just as I'd intended. So what was the problem? I texted Lisa again. What's wrong with the place? Her response made me laugh. They say the house reeks. I blinked. Reeks? Yeah, she wrote. Your sister said there's a nasty smell in the bedroom and hallway like something's rotting. She refused to move in. That caught me off guard. I thought back to the work I'd done. There was no way I'd left anything behind that could cause a stench like that. But then it clicked. The flooring. The hallway and bedroom had water damage before I started the repairs. That's why I'd torn out the old carpet. The subfloor underneath was damp and starting to rot in spots. I told my dad we needed to replace it entirely, but he refused, saying it was too costly, and insisted I just put the new flooring over it. I'd argued, but he wouldn't budge, so I followed his orders. Now, 48 hours later, that trapped moisture had likely turned into mold and the smell was creeping through. I grinned. They'd brought this on themselves. If they'd let me do the job properly, this wouldn't have happened. But they always cut corners, and now the stench of decay was ruining their shiny new renovations. Lisa texted again. Your dad's calling contractors to figure it out, but they're saying they might have to tear everything up. He's blaming you, saying you botched the job. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. The man who'd kicked me out after I'd done all the work, who'd let me spend $3,700 of my own money, who'd given the room to my sister, was now facing a massive repair bill. And the best part, I didn't owe him a dime. I sat back, sipping my drink, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. For once, I didn't have to lift a finger to get justice. They'd done this to themselves. By the next morning, my mom's texts had shifted from guilt trips to desperation. Jonathan, please, we need your help. We didn't know how bad it was. Your dad's overwhelmed. I wasn't buying it. I knew the game. My sister had refused to move in, the smell was getting worse, and now they suddenly needed me again. I ignored them for a bit, but then my sister called. I picked up, mostly to hear what she'd say. Jonathan, I get that you're upset, she started, but this is serious. The house is unlivable. There's mold or something under the floors. I almost laughed. Not my problem, I said, she sighed. Dad's willing to make a deal. Can you just come check it out? A deal? I repeated. Like the deal where I fixed the house and got kicked out the second I was done. I wasn't planning to go back, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see the chaos they'd created, so I told her, fine, I'll stop by, but I'm not promising anything. A few hours later, I pulled into their driveway. My dad was outside, pacing, hands on his hips. When he saw me, he waved me over like everything was fine. Jonathan, glad you're here, he said, forcing a grin. Come take a look. I walked inside, and the smell hit me immediately. It was worse than I'd imagined, a heavy, musty odor like rotting wood and mildew. The air felt damp and suffocating. My sister stood in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed, looking furious. I can't live here, she muttered. It's disgusting. I stepped inside, pretending to inspect the flooring. I didn't need to, though. I knew exactly what was wrong. The moisture trapped under the new floors had turned into a mold infestation. Fixing it would mean ripping everything out. The flooring I'd installed. Gone. The hallway repairs, useless. The shelves, pointless. This wasn't a quick fix, it was a complete redo. My dad cleared his throat. So here's the plan, he said, smiling like he was offering me a gift. You come back, help us tear this out, fix it right, and this time, he paused for effect. We won't ask you to leave. You can stay as long as you want. I laughed, a real, deep laugh. This man, who'd used me for free labor, kicked me out without a second thought, and let me spend thousands on his house, was now acting like he was doing me a favor by offering me a place to stay in the home I'd rebuilt. I shook my head. No, his smile faded. What? No, I repeated. I'm not fixing this. His face turned red. Jonathan, be reasonable. This is your family. We're supposed to help each other. I smirked. Funny. You didn't think that 2 days ago. My sister looked away and my mom shifted uncomfortably, but my dad kept pushing. We made a mistake, he said. We should have handled it differently. But are you really going to let your family struggle when you can help? Yes, I said without hesitation. I turned and walked out. No yelling, no arguing, just done. It felt incredible. I got in my truck, drove off, and didn't look back. I thought that was the end of it. I'd made my choice and I was ready to move on. But my family wasn't done. An hour after I got back to Jake's, my phone started buzzing again. I ignored the calls, but then Jake, who'd been scrolling online, burst out laughing. "Man, check this out," he said, showing me his phone. There it was, a long, melodramatic post from my mom on social media, painting me as the ungrateful son who'd abandoned his family in their hour of need. She didn't name me outright, but it was clear who she meant. She wrote about how they'd taken me in when I was struggling, given me a home, only for me to turn my back on them when they needed me most. She conveniently left out the part where they'd kicked me out after I'd done all the work. The comments were predictable. "That's terrible. Family comes first. Kids these days have no gratitude." Jake scrolled further. "Oh, here's a good one. Your aunt chimed in. Don't worry, I'll talk to him." I groaned. Great. Soon enough, texts from relatives started pouring in. "My aunt. Jonathan, how could you do this to your parents?" My uncle. "I don't know the whole story, but just fix it. They're your family." Even my grandma sent a wobbly text. "Why you hurt them?" I was about to mute my phone when Lisa called. I answered. "You saw the post?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "It's worse than you think," she added. "How?" "They're telling people you stole from them," she said. "They're saying you buy late in the middle of the renovations and took materials, screws, tools, whatever, and that's why the house is a mess." I laughed, stunned. Lying, that was low even for them. I expected guilt trips, but making me out to be a thief, that was new. "They know I didn't take anything," I told Lisa. "I know," she said, "but they're spinning it to make you look bad and people are buying it." Jake leaned back. "So what's your move?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Nothing." Lisa paused. "Seriously?" "Yeah," I said. "They want me to react. They want to fight. I'm not giving them one." Jake grinned. "That's I scold. I respect it." Lisa sighed. "Good luck, but don't be surprised if they keep pushing." She was right, because the next day, my dad showed up at my workplace. I was at my job, managing inventory at a warehouse. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, a space where they had no power over me. I looked up and saw my dad standing in the lobby. I almost laughed. Of course he'd come here. I walked over. "What do you want?" "We need to talk," he said, arms crossed like he still had some authority over me. I cut him off before he could start. "Save it. I'm not coming back. I'm not fixing anything. I'm done." His jaw tightened. "Jonathan, you're being unreasonable. Your mother's a mess over this. She hasn't slept since you left." I snorted. "She slept fine after kicking me out. Funny how that works." "She just wants her family together," he said, ignoring me. "We all do, but you've put us in a tough spot. Is this really fair?" I stared at him. "Fair? Let's talk about fair. Fair would have been letting me stay in the room I fixed. Fair would have been respecting the work I did instead of tossing me out the moment I was done. Fair would have been not lying about me online, making me look like I stole from you." His face darkened. "We only said that because you forced us to," I laughed. "You forced yourselves. I didn't do anything. You made this mess and now you're scrambling for someone to blame." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to find a solution. Let's work this out." "There's no working this out," I said. "You made your choice, now I've made mine." His expression changed. He could see I wasn't budging. "Jonathan," he said, softening his tone, "we're still your family." "No," I said. "You're just people I used to know." He opened his mouth, but I was already walking away. No shouting, no big scene, just done. A week later, I blocked them all, changed my number, found a new apartment. Lisa kept me in the loop for a bit, telling me how my parents were playing the victim to anyone who'd listen. My dad told relatives I'd abandoned them for no reason. My mom cried to family about how she didn't understand what went wrong. But eventually, I told Lisa to stop updating me. I was done caring. I'd spent years bending over backward for people who'd never return the favor. For the first time, I felt free. No more guilt, no more obligations, no more family who saw me as nothing but a means to an end. And it felt incredible.